I have promised you several times on air that as soon as I could get up to the iHub, I would do some videos for you on Canvas Workspace, because it is a whole new world of creativity, I think is the best way to put it. And I was really scared of it when I first heard about it. And I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to do that, but I love it. There are two versions. So you've got the web app version, which is the one that I use, which I find easier to navigate. There is also an option for a PC version. And when you register for Canvas Workspace, so you just search Canvas Workspace, it will offer you the chance to register. It needs a username and a password, and then you can access Canvas Workspace. It gives you then the option to download to PC. That for me is more like a traditional graphics program where you've got drop downs and files and edit and all that kind of thing. So I prefer to work on the web app version. It is now available for Mac users, which is brilliant because we got asked that question a lot. So it's now been available for that as well. And I just want to do some basic talk around here. And then I'm going to do another section where we look at the files from the Stencil USB. I've already got some projects saved that I've done on previous USBs, so I'll show you one of those as well, because we've changed the checklist now. So we make sure that every single one of our files doesn't have any stray paths on it, because if it does, you'll get an error message, and we can't go back and redo all the other files because it's my fault, because we've just started to decide that I'm going to take you through Canvas Workspace in 2021, and going back and doing that will be far too much work. Not that you're not worth it, but we've got enough going on without having to go back and do that. But from now on in, they're all going to be checked. So you can then get really creative with the shapes. So this is what you will see when you open up. If you've got yourself a scan and cut, what you do is go into your account. So you've got a little head at the top that says your name or your username at the side of it. And then you'll go into machines registration. Now I've already got 3 scan and cuts linked to this, because when I go into the studios, I'll link that one. If they give me a different machine next time, I'll link that one. But you need to make sure that this is all here. So if I just delete one of them off, just by clicking it and removing the machine, I've now got 2. So you can then go in and register a new machine. And when you go onto your scan and cut and go down to Canvas Workspace, it will give you a code, and you type the code in there. Then when you've typed the code in, you press OK, and it gives you a 4-digit PIN number, and you type the PIN number into your scan and cut. So it's really, really easy to link them. And once you've done that, you're ready to go. To come out of that, just press Canvas Workspace and it takes you back to the home page. So if we just look at this here, you have got hundreds of projects on this screen. And when you click on one of them, you will get the chance to download the files to make them. You'll get a video tutorial, or you get a link to take you to YouTube to watch a video tutorial. And you get instructions as well. So if you want to print them off, you can print them off as well. So if you're a teacher and you want to teach stuff, this is a perfect way for you to get some really cool projects. So these are all put on by Brother. When they add to them, you don't need to do anything. It will automatically put them into your Canvas account, so you don't need to think about that either. But what we're going to do is talk through starting a new project. So you can see at the top, you've got Canvas project, which is what they call all these projects here. You've got your projects, or my projects, which are the ones that you've saved. You've got pattern collections, which are extra cards that you can buy with more designs on. They tend to be quite basic. So I don't own very many of them, because I bought the first couple and I was like, I can do better on a USB, and that's not being detrimental to Brother at all, but they are quite basic designs. And then you've got your Disney ones. So if you buy any of the Disney cards, you can then access those as well. And then you've got new. So we're going to click on that, and that opens up a new mat for you. Down this side then, you've got access to your projects. You've got your basic shapes, your borders, your logos, your text, so you've got your fonts in there as well. You've got your rhinestones, so any additional kits that you add to it, so your rhinestone starter kit, you can put into Canvas, and it gives you some free designs to work with. You don't have to have registered those in Canvas to use them on your machine. It's just if you want to access the designs that Brother give you. Same with the stamping, the line embossing, the region embossing and the foiling. So everything is accessible to you in Canvas. As we go through this tutorial, I'm going to talk to you about letters, because you need to, if you want to create inward and offset lines with a letter, you need to send it in from your machine. But I'll talk to you about that as a later stage. We'll do that as a full piece. So if I just go into the basic shapes here, you will see down this side now you've got the basic shapes that you would find in your machine. And they are the basic shapes that are in the original CM600. So you don't get the shapes from the SDX machines in Canvas Workspace, because people have paid more for their machines in order to get those designs, but you get all the basics that you need. So if I bring on a circle, for example, you will see it gives you a select box. If you tap the screen and move it, you can move it around just like you would on your scan and cut. All these different nodules here, if you click on that, you can drag. So you can drag to the right, click on the bottom one, I can drag down, click to the right one. And I'm not very good at touchscreen technology, it drives me mad. But then you can move it again, you can drag it, you can rotate it, so you can turn it round manually. And then you can, if you click one of the corner ones, it will drag it in a ratio. But the great thing about Canvas Workspace, if you're new and you're designing something, not necessarily line by line or path by path, but you want to design something, you can, and you think, oh no, I don't actually like that, you can undo it. So you can undo, and there isn't a limit on the amount of steps that you can undo, which is great. Sometimes you have to just leave it for a few seconds to catch up with you, because I'm like this, I press the button really quickly, I'm like, come on, it doesn't work like that. You have to give it time to catch up, but it will eventually take it back to that original circle. So I'm going to talk you through some of these things at the top. So if we go into project, for example, you can add a new project by pressing the plus with the mat. You can download a design. You can save a pattern. So if I just click on that one, it gives me the option to save that. If I go back into project and do that, it saves it again. If I go back into project, you've got 1, 2, 3. So if we click on that, counts the amount of shapes, so you know whether that pattern that you've imported is, because every machine will read a different amount of lines or shapes. So let me think if I can remember this. The CM300 and 600 does 300 shapes. The special edition and the 900 does 600 shapes. And I think the SDX 1200 does 900. So you can cut more detailed patterns. If it's individual shapes, so say you wanted to cut 600 little tiny hearts for confetti for a wedding table, if on your lower spec machines you do 300, it won't allow you to put 301 in. But if you group the 300, it then sees it as 1. So then you can. So there are always little workarounds. So have a play with it and see what you can come up with. So that counts the shapes. Then you've got this one, which is scan and cut canvas. So this is enhanced image tracing. So if you want to scan in a photograph and maybe it's got you and your partner and you've got loads of stuff behind it and you want to trace around just you and your partner, you can do that. That's getting quite advanced in Canvas. So I'm going to stick to the basics for now, but we can always come back and do more with that in the future. And then you've got importing an SVG file. So if you haven't got a Wi-Fi enabled machine and you want to import something on your laptop from your USB, you would plug your USB in, you would go to the SVG button either in project or at the top of your screen here. So if we go into project, because that's what we're looking at, and then you would choose your file. It will then open up all your saved areas, so your downloads, your USB, things like that on your laptop, and you click on it and you choose the file and then you press OK on here and it brings it up on the screen. So even if you haven't got a Wi-Fi enabled machine and you don't want to upgrade, and I totally get that, then you can do it via USB on your laptop. So there's always a way of getting those patterns into Canvas Workspace. Once they're in there, you can save them. So then you don't have to go back to your computer every time. So that's really good as well. So I'm going to cancel that. The next thing we're going to go into is edit, and this is the one that we're going to use a lot. Now, a lot of these are greyed out at the moment because I've only got one shape. So I've nothing to undo. If I select it, the shape, you'll get more. Can you see? But I haven't changed it, so there's nothing for it to undo. But you can go backwards or forwards, which is fabulous because it saves you having to start again. It saves you having to bring that pattern in and divide it and all those different things that we're going to do. So that's really good. That one is your cut. So if you want to get rid of something, you copy it and you paste. So if you want to do 2 circles, for example, I can copy it, I can go back into edit and I can paste it, and I've got 2 circles now. So just sit quietly and just press the buttons and see what it does, because you're not wasting any card or paper. And then you could do a little video of what you're doing, and then you know what to do when you come back. Because if you're anything like me, it takes me, I have to do things loads of times for it to become second nature. But that's when sometimes you make a mistake and you find something else. So I don't worry about that. Then I go into edit, we've got group. So if I want to select more than one shape, I tap on my screen and I drag a box like that. And then when I go into edit, I can group those 2 together. So now I can move those as one part. So it's very similar to what you have in your machine. So it's not like you're trying to learn new symbols. There might be added extra ones on Canvas, but it's not like you're having to learn what group looks like all over again, or weld. So it's a really, really good one to get used to. So I'm going to undo that so that it's now, undo it again, so that they're now, hang on, bear with. I must have done that more than twice. Oh no, I don't need to do, I don't undo that way. See, I'm still learning it too. You ungroup it like that, and then you tap it, and you've got 2 circles. So now you've got, this one is your selecting both as well in edit. So if you don't want to drag a box, you can do it that way. If we go into edit and highlight one of the shapes, you've got your bin. And then you've got this button here, and this is one that we're going to use a lot. So if I just come out of here and just move that circle out of the way, and highlight this one, and we're going to edit this one with the 2 circles, is actually on your SDX machines, and it's creating an inward or an outward offset line. In your machine, there are some patterns that it won't allow you to do it for, because it might need another process before you can get to that stage. But in Canvas Workspace, you can create that as well. So I'm going to do this one, and this opens up Create Offset Line screen. So you can set the distance of the offset line. So if we keep it at 5mm so it's really clear for you to see, you can do it as an outward or an inward just by pressing the button. If you've got a shape and you want to create an offset line only around the outer edge, you can leave it as it is, you can delete the outer edge, or you can set to a drawing line. So if you just want to create a 5mm outward offset line of, say, an oval, you can then set it to delete the original line automatically, or you can leave it in place and you can delete it on the main screen. So it's up to you which way you want to use it, whatever you find easier. And then you can also set it as a drawing line. So let's say, for example, we wanted to create a frame that had a drawing line on the inside, so a circle, and you wanted it to cut the outside circle but have a drawing line on the inside. You can set it as a drawing line in here. I'll also show you another place where you can set it as a drawing line as well. And then if you've got something that's like a square, you can set the corner type as well. So you can set it as a round corner or a bevel corner, and you can do all that on one screen. So you're not having to go into different places. So that's a really cool place to go into and have a play. It's fabulous, I love it. So if I'm just, for now, I'm just going to do a 5mm outward offset line. Once I'm happy, I press OK. And now you can see I've got my original circle, which it keeps highlighted. It doesn't automatically select the offset line, but I've also got that outer one as well. Now, an offset line is different to just making a shape bigger, especially when you come to something like a scallop. So if you make a scallop bigger, it will still, let me do it for you. Let me just show you because it's easier to show you. So if I bring on a scallop circle like that, and I go to edit, and I copy it and I duplicate it, so I've got 2, and I'll line those 2 up. So I will drag across the 2 and I want to align them. So this is something I'm going to cover again for you. So align them centrally vertically and centrally horizontally, so I've got both of them on top of each other. If I just make that one bigger, so if I just drag, oh God, I'm rubbish at this bit. I'm better on a laptop, to be honest with you, because I can use my mouse. Right, Melanie, come on. And I drag it like that. And then I'm going to align those two again. So I'm going to go to Edit and align it centrally vertically, and Edit and align it centrally horizontally. You can see that although it's got a 5mm distance between the curve of the scallops, it's a little bit narrower when it comes in. So I'm going to leave that one on the screen for now, and I'm going to bring on another scallop circle so that you can see the difference rather. And I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to align. I can just do it like this for now because I'm going to make this one bigger anyway. And then I'm going to click on that one. So I've got two exactly the same. Actually, I only need one. So I'm going to put that in the bin. This one I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to go to Create Offset Line, and I'm going to do that 5mm outward offset line again. So I'm going to press OK, and you can see now the difference between the two. I'm going to put them side by side for you. So I'm going to do that and bring them side by side, and you can see the difference in those two shapes. So this one comes in further towards the point of the scallop, and this one stays a 5mm distance between those two spaces. So get your phone out or your tablet or your computer and do that, because then you'll understand the difference and how it looks, what it looks like. So you now have perfect millimetre increment mats and layers for your basic shapes, which makes it so easy to mat and layer. It's brilliant. So let me just go back to the circle again. So let's say that we want to do some more matting and layering. So that's my original one. I want to go in here and I want to do a 1mm outward offset line. Okay, so I press OK now, and it gives me a really fine point. If I now click on that, I need to select the outside one now. So now I can take the biggest one and I can go to Edit, because it puts them in on a pile, remember? So it will always select the one that's the last one that's been added on, because it puts it in a pile. So it piles them up. So if then I go back into here and I want to do, say, a 3mm outward offset line, I can do that. And then I'll click on that one, because it sees that one as the top one. It needs, if you click it, if you're pressing it and it's not doing anything, it needs to catch up. So just bear with it. So if I click on that one, I could then do a 5mm offset line on that one, like that. Now, if I want to go back to the inside one, I can't get to it because I've got a pile. So what you do is you go to Edit and you send it in the order to the back. And then you click on your next one and you send that backwards. And then your next one and you send that one backwards. And then eventually you'll get to your original one. So you've got to think in terms of how the machine places shapes. It puts them on top of each other like that. And that will become really important when you're starting to do things like dividing and removing overlapped, because it depends, you have to be able to know that to be able to do that bit. So now from my original circle, I could go to Edit again and into the offset line, and I could create a 5mm inward offset line. So if you think, oh, actually I want something for a sentiment, or I want to cut my picture a bit smaller, you can still do that. So then you've got all these different circles in one go for all your matting and layering. And then you can position them on your mat the way that you want them. You need to make sure that they are all back on your mat and within the red line, because if I take one out and I try and download it, it will tell me this project cannot be downloaded. Some shapes extend beyond the cutting area. If I close that and I bring that back in and I try to download it, it then tells me that it can be downloaded. So it will give you a message and tell you if you're doing something wrong, all right? Or if your file has a stray path or something just can't be done with that file. And sometimes things just can't be done. So we just have to accept that, but there is a lot that can be done. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So let me get rid of those circles. Let me put those in the bin. And let's bring on a fresh circle so we can work with this. So I'm going to do 2 of these because I'm going to move to the next section that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to go to edit and I'm just going to duplicate. So I've now got 2 of my circles. And we're going to go back into, well, I'm going to highlight both first. So I'm going to select both and I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to align them both so they're at the bottom. So I've now got those 2 circles level. And I'm going to talk about the alignment later on, but I'm going to go to the process overlap bit at the bottom because this is the bit that really excites me as a creative person because it means I can do loads of different stuff. And since discovering this, and I haven't really worked a lot in Canvas, if I'm really honest, but I decided that 2021 was going to be the year where I took you into Canvas while you're just potentially, if you've never dipped your toe into Canvas Workspace, because I know a lot of you bought the Scan and Cut because it doesn't need a computer, but while you're at a level that's just literally just underneath where I'm at, it's a nice time to teach you. So we can go on the journey together and I'm not too far ahead, so I can remember to tell you all the little bits that I learned that are important. So I've started to use this differently, and because I've used it differently, I've started to get the team to design differently. Because it's really important to me then that I can take a shape from a stencil and I can put another shape and I can put that stencil design in that shape. And I want to be able to teach you all that sort of stuff. So everything from the USBs that we decide to do, to the design process, to the finished item, to my demonstrations is changing and evolving throughout this year. So just be aware of that. And I'm really sorry that we can't go back and change everything that we've already done, but that would take us years to go through every file. But from now on in, and every time I find something new, we'll add that in, which is really exciting. And the team are really enjoying it too, which is nice. So let's talk about these 4 buttons at the bottom. So the first one is weld. And if you're doing this on a PC, it might be worth you doing it on a laptop or a PC first, because when you hover over it with your mouse, it tells you what it does. Or you could draw that out and you could do yourself a little index and write at the side what each one is, because it's worth doing that. Or you could do a screenshot. If you're working on your phone or your tablet, you can do a screenshot and save it. But I think just pressing a button, you know, you can always undo it, so you're not wasting your time, but it's a really cool thing to do. So weld, we are all familiar with. It will give you that, okay? On here, what's really great is I can undo that. So I've now got my 2 circles. So I don't have to go in and bring another circle in and duplicate it and align it. I can just undo it. The next one, so we're going to drag a box. I'm going to go to edit, and this one is subtract. So when I do this, it looks like nothing's happened. No, actually, that's not subtract. Sorry, I'm telling you a fib. That's divide. All right. So let me go back and show you again. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to divide it. And that's the one that we've used a lot so far when I've done shows on air. What that does is it moves that, and it leaves me with that separate. So think about the shapes that you can make with that and have a play. So for example, I'm going to see if this works because I haven't tried this. A lot of this is just, I'm winging it as I'm talking to you, but this is the exciting bit because then I get giddy and then I think about something else. And when I'm driving home tonight, obviously I'll be concentrating, but I'll be thinking about all the different things that we've done today. So let's say, for example, I'm going to try this and see if it works. Let's bring on a, drives me mad this bit, a circle. I'll make it bigger, like that. So I'm going to see now if I bring on a square, because there isn't a semicircle scallop on here. So if I now do this and I drag that and I position that in the middle like that and make it slightly bigger. And there'll be loads of you watching this going, well, we know that. We've been doing that forever. Brilliant. I'm really pleased for you, but I haven't. So it's all a new learning experience. So I'm going to drag across here now and I'm going to go to edit. And I'm going to divide. And if I now move that, first of all, look at this. This is what I mean. This is when I get really giddy. So now you've got a little pocket that's got a scallop in it. So if you wanted to pop a gift card, you could pop it in there. How pretty is that? Now I've got 2 half scallop circles. So that's now a completely new shape that I don't have in my basic shapes. That's super cool, isn't it? I love that. I think that is brilliant. So now what I could do is you could rotate these and have them as a gatefold card. You've got this pocket that's new and extra. It's super, super, super exciting. So I want you to just play, just think like that, just think in shapes, bring something on. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least you've tried it, but it gives you the option to be able to do lots of other stuff. So for example, I'm just thinking about another one now. So if I go into there and I bring on a square and I drag this down and I grab the corner, hopefully. Oh, I am rubbish with this. I need a lesson. There you go, like that. And I pop that there. And then I bring on my, let's say we do a triangle, and I bring that down to the middle and I make that a bit bigger, like that. And I position that there. So maybe I want to make a banner like this. So if I move that up to there, like that, and I make that a little bit shorter that way. So I'll keep the width, but I make it shorter. And then I drag this down to the bottom. And then I pick up that again, and I'm going to align those both to the bottom. So to make sure that they're straight, I'm going to align them centrally, vertically. Oh, hello. It goes into zoom now and again. I need to come out of that. How do I get that smaller again? See, what I do then is I get really cross and I go into Canvas Workspace and I start again from the beginning. So if it ever does that and you can't get back, just go back to the beginning. Let's bring on that square again. I'm no expert on this at all, as you can probably tell, but I like sharing the exciting bits that I find with you. So you know what, you'll forgive me that bit because I know you're all lovely out there. And if you don't forgive me, then I'm not going to lose sleep over it, to be honest. Right, so I'm going to drag this triangle. They'll be like, just do this, Melanie. Make it bigger, like that. Right, so I'm going to drag that. And I'm going to position that now at the bottom there. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Right, there is another way of doing this that I'm going to show you. So if I go into this box here, this gives me my shapes. So if I find out, if I move this and I find out how big the square is, it's 151.3. So if I then click on that and make that 151.3, and you can be more precise in Canvas, because in the scanner cut it gives you millimetre increments. On here you can set it. As long as that box is ticked to maintain aspect ratio, it will automatically change the height and the width of that triangle. So now it's dropped down. So now if I do this and I grab that and I go to edit and I align them centrally, vertically, and edit and align them to the bottom, that will put that triangle in there. Now what I want to do is make that triangle shorter, but keep the width. So if I now go to properties again, to select it first, Melanie, select the triangle, and go into properties now, it should give me the size. Sometimes it has a bit of a wobble when you ask it to do too much. So let's just move that triangle down a bit like that. In fact, let's move the square up and the triangle like that. If I now drag across those two and I go to edit and divide, I've now got a banner. And I've also got another shape down here as well. So I'm going to do that again because I made a real hash of that, but I'm not going to stop the recording and start again, because this is what it's like. This is what my life is like. I'll sit and I'll go, right, let me think of something new that I can teach everybody. And then I get it wrong and I delete it and I undo it and I do all that sort of stuff. So when you're doing that, don't think that I just do it perfectly every time, because I really, really don't. I do a lot of practice first, although obviously I haven't done it on this. So let's bring that square in again and let's work methodically through this. So let's go into my properties and I'm going to make this bigger. So you can do it by pressing the plus button. So let's take this up to 120 and that will maintain that ratio, but it doesn't change until you press across. Then I'm going to go and find let's do a rounded triangle this time. and I'm going to bring this down. So I'm going to make this triangle now. I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to check, I'm going to make this 120. This one 120 because I want it to be 120 wide. And I can go in and get rid of that and put a 0 in place. And if I untick the maintain aspect ratio, it will keep it shorter. So I'm going to do that, and that's adjusted that triangle now. So now I can move that up to there, and I can see it's central, so I'm not going to bother aligning it. And then I do that, and I go to edit and I divide it. You've then got that bit. So that would be fabulous as like almost like an envelope top. Do you know what I mean? If you have that, you know, when they come down, you get those nice fancy envelopes that have that rounded corner seal on them. That could be that. I've then got that part of the triangle. So that could then become, see, I'm looking at that now and thinking sailboat. So you make a rectangle. So, but then I've got this, which is my banner piece. So I've got 3 new shapes now. So I'm going to get rid of the banner bit, and I'm going to bring in my rectangle, and I'm going to bring that down there, and I'm going to go back into the properties of that, and I want to make it narrow. So I'm going to take that down to, let's say, 5 millimeters. So I'm going to put 5 in there, and I'm going to take the height of it down to, let's say, 30, like that. And then as soon as I need to take that back down to 5 again, so 5.0, close that. It now narrows my rectangle. Okay, now I can go in and I'm going to rotate that round. This might be a bit tricky because it's small. Right, there is a place where I can rotate. Let me find where I can rotate. Might be in. I've got to check and find out where all these things are, because like I said, I'm still new to this. I think it might be in, might be in properties actually. Rotate, yes it is here. So I can rotate that 90 degrees. Like that. And then I've got my little rectangle. So I can then move this up like that. And I can move that down to the bottom like that. And then I can drag a box, and I can go to edit and align everything centrally. And then I can go to edit and weld. And I've got a little sailboat. So you start to think in shapes. Everything in the world is made up of shapes. So look at things differently. And you can take, that was a square and a triangle, and we've now got a sailboat out of just those 2 shapes. It's brilliant. And the more you do it, the more excited you become about it. And I know loads of you have already got to this stage, but it's just brilliant. And to do that with the kids, you know, if I sat there with my granddaughter and I went, right, let's make a sailboat out of a triangle and a square, she'd be like, what do you mean? But it's teaching them that, you know, it's teaching them about shapes and how when you weld shapes together, they become other shapes. And it's just really fun. So if you're sitting there one day and there's not much on telly and you're a bit like, I don't know if I can be creative today, just have a play in Canvas Workspace because it's great fun. And then if you want to save that, you go to your projects and you press the plus button and it saves that project. And then to find that project again, so if I get rid of that, I go back and I go into my projects, and there is that sailboat. So it's saved forever. And you've no maximum capacity in Canvas because it saves it in the cloud. So you can save as many projects as you want. Right, so I went off on a bit of a tangent there, which I do quite a lot. So let's go back to what we were doing originally. So let's go back and bring on our basic shapes again. So circle, I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to duplicate it so that I've got 2, and I'm going to move that one, and then I'm going to align them both to the bottom edge. So go to edit again, and wherever the line is in your alignment function is where it will align the shapes to. So I want to align them either to the bottom or the top. So let's do the bottom. So I know that they're level now. So while they're now highlighted, we've done weld and we've done divide. Now we're going to do remove overlapped, which is this one. So what that does is remove any lines that overlap each other. So you get a half moon and a full moon. Okay, and that we're going to do when I'm going to show you something really cool with that. I've already done it on air, but a lot of you have said, can you do it again and do a video for us? So that's why we're doing this. So if I just undo that now and then undo it again, I'm back to my 2 circles. So let's drag that, go to edit and align them to the bottom again. And then the next one is subtract. So this one does something different again. It gets rid of everything and it just leaves you with that moon shape. So if you haven't got a moon shape on your machine, which I think you have one, but you might want it a little bit more rounded or a little bit fuller or a little bit narrower, you can absolutely create that now just by pressing a button. So go into those functions in there and just play and just have that time where you sit there and discover. You're not wasting cards, you're not wasting, you know, any materials, but you're discovering all these new amazing things that you can do, which is fantastic. And that's what we want as crafters. You know, you've invested a lot of money in your scan and cut, and it's okay saying, oh yeah, you just pop the USB in and you just cut stuff, which is fabulous. But surely, as creative people, we want to learn as much as possible and we want to get as much value out of our scan and cut as we possibly can. And that's my mission for this, for 2021. I want to bring you all these new ideas because there's no point me discovering something and not sharing it. That's boring. What's the point of that? So the more people I can share it with, the better. So if I teach you something in here, you do a little video tutorial for your friends and teach them. And everybody will then get used to doing Canvas Workspace and it will just be fantastic. So I'm going to do it now with a different shape. So I'm going to go into the projects that I've already saved because I want to go and revisit a USB that we did a couple of months ago so that you can see how divide works when you've got multiple shapes. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go into my projects and I'm going to scroll down until I find a project that will be appropriate. So let me get rid of that because I don't want that. Let me bring this one on, for example. So this is from now I have to remember because we're working months ahead. This is from what was the last USB that we did? It'll come to me. I'll think about it and it'll come to me. We did a card maker's calendar and then we did another one. Oh, birds, balloons and butterflies. So this is from that, and this is the one that I did where I cut the teardrop and dropped alcohol ink onto Yupo. And then I did a black, I cut this out of black and put it over the top and it created like a sun catcher. So this design right now, what the machine sees is the teardrop shape as a solid and then all these pieces in here as well. Now I might have already divided this, so we'll see, we'll find out as I go along. So I'm going to drag a box around that and I'm just going to realign it so that it's centrally vertically and centrally horizontally. And then I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to try dividing it. Now, if I've already done it once, it won't let me do it. Now, you might also get a message that says this: cannot execute this pattern with an open or intersecting path. That means that when it's been designed, there's a stray line somewhere. And it could be that when you design a die as a graphic designer, you can have slightly open paths, so a line that doesn't completely meet. That's what that means. The pressure of a die cutting machine will eliminate that gap and you'll never know it was there. But digitally, you can't actually see it on the screen because I've sat next to the graphic designers when they've done it and you can't see it as like a darker line or something like that. You have to go in really zoom in and isolate a certain area to find it. So occasionally they get missed. Now, because I'm making sure that everything is being divided, you won't have that message. And if you do, you need to let me know, or you need to let the designer whose name is in the booklet know. So the way that we can get around, so that one I can't divide. All right, so I'm going to put that in the bin. So I'm going to try and find one that we can divide. I'm going to get more of my projects so that you can see what it's like. And I think if I go to, I've got to find what the original one was. That's what I'm trying to find for you now. So if I go down here, might work with this one. So let's try with this. So if I go to drag a box around both of those, I think I've already done this one as well, but let's try it. Edit and divide. You get this bar that comes across the top, which tells you that it's working and it's doing something. If I now grab this, now this is going to work. I've now got a piece that I can drag away, and I've got all the waste bits left behind. So I'm going to explain to you now why that happens. So we're going back to the scan and cut seeing this shape differently than we see it. So what the scan and cut sees is a lot of detail pieces, so parts, so shapes, with one big circle on top of it. That's how it sees it. And if you don't divide it and you try to weld something to it, because it's made up of lots of different parts, and when you weld something, all the parts have to be overlapped, you can't weld, and it will tell you that it can't be welded. What divide does is acts like a big punch. So if you imagine that there's a big punch across here, and it punches down, but as it punches down, it picks up all the waste bits that are left behind. It then can see it as a circle with all the pieces cut out of it. So it sees it as one shape, but it can see all the pieces. So then, because it's one piece, you can weld another shape to it, because all you're overlapping is the shape that you've divided and the shape that you are welding. So it's just welding two shapes. It's not welding the circle, all the decorative pieces are shapes, and the other circle. So then it will allow you to do it. So have a play with it. And once I discovered this, I then said to the team that work on the SVG team, said we need to make sure that every single one of them has no stray paths in it. We need to make sure that every single one of them can be divided. So they went, right, okay, that's more work. I'm like, I know, but it means that our customers are still paying the same price for the USB, but you're getting a lot more out of it. And that's fabulous. It's challenging because sometimes you've got to try and it might take half an hour to find a straight path, which is frustrating, but it means that you're getting the best out of your USBs. So that's what we're going to do going forward. So I'm going to put this in the bin now, and I'm just going to go back through a little bit more in Canvas, and then I'm going to teach you some stuff that we can do from the machine, sending a file from the machine into here. Okay. So across your top, you've got new project, you've got a download, you've got image tracing, you've got your SVG importing, which we looked at earlier. This is when you're creating your own paths. So if you're somebody that wants to design your own stencils, things like that, you can use your path, and you've got different paths in there as you go along. I haven't even ventured into that yet. I'm not good enough on a tablet or good enough on my PC to understand how that works. So I'll get there. I'm not going to promise when, but there will be loads of video tutorials out there already from people who are way ahead of me on that kind of thing. And I will learn it, but I'm not ready to learn that yet because I'm still excited about what I'm discovering simply. And I think that's okay to do that. You don't have to learn everything all at once. Can you imagine if you learned everything in your first 10 years of life? Life would be really boring because then you'd never discover anything new, would you? So I like that. And that's my way of saying that. I'll get to that, but I haven't got there yet. This is your undo button. That's your delete button. And then in properties. So I need to bring a shape on to be able to show you properties. So I'll bring that shape on. When I go into properties now, you can see you can set this as a cutting drawing line, as a cutting only line, as a drawing only line, or fill the area in the outline with the drawing function. So I can set everything that I want to set in here. Now you'll notice, and sometimes it does this, and I don't know why, but sometimes when you go into properties, it doesn't give you the size. So when I go into properties now, can you see it's not giving me the size? I don't know why it does it. If anybody does know, let us know, but I don't know why it does it. But if I just refresh my page, so if I just go back to the home screen and bring on that shape again, and I go into properties now, it gives me the size back. So sometimes it's like everything else with technology, you've just got to refresh it. all right? And then you can change your size. So let's talk about the size. If you're not sure which is your height and your width, if you just drag this, and you only need to do this once because then you remember, if you drag it like that and you go back into properties, you can see now that that is the height because I've dragged it down, I've made it taller, and that's the width. So the way this is, if you don't know me, this is going to sound like I'm a complete cuckoo, but I remember that now because the letter H comes before the letter W. So the letter H for height comes before the letter W for width. So I know that that's my height and that's my width. I know, bonkers, but that's how my brain works. So you can do that. So if we come out and undo that, so I'm back to my original shape, you always need to make sure it's selected, and I go back in here. If I just press the plus button like this, it will change both of those sizes automatically because underneath it you've got the box ticked that maintains the aspect ratio. An aspect ratio is something that we've learnt about on our machine because I often say unlock the aspect ratio and you can change the height and the width independently. It's exactly the same in Canvas. The difference in Canvas is that you can change that in fractions of a millimetre or fractions of a 1/16 of an inch. So you can go really, really, really precise. And to do that, if you use the plus and the minus, it will always just go in millimetres. If you physically type it in, so if I did 117.45 or 4, for example, so I need to backspace the 0 first and go 117.4, it will then change it in 0.4 of a millimetre. So it gives you much more precision. So if you're somebody that likes to work really precisely, that's a great way of doing it, especially if you're doing your own paths and your own lines. If you take that tick box off, it just changes the height and not the width. So you're in control just by ticking that box or unticking the box. This is your rotate. So again, on the scan and cut, you can rotate in 1 degree increments. Let's see if we can rotate in 90.3 degrees. As soon as I close it, the answer is yes, you can. So it doesn't look much different. If I just undo that and do it in a different size, because 90 degrees is just a rotation, isn't it? And this is a symmetrical shape. So if I go back in and just do the rotate again for you, and let's do it at 61.7. Just first numbers that come into my head, and I click that, can you see it's now rotated it to that precision, which is phenomenal. And that's the precision that you get as a graphic designer on something like Illustrator. So if you want to be that precise, you can be in Canvas Workspace. And then if you're thinking, well, I want to do it on my machine, just send it into here, change it and send it back to your machine and carry on working on that shape. Because if you've got a Wi-Fi enabled machine, it's really quick. And I do that all the time. I will always have my phone at the side of me, more than my tablet and more than my laptop, because it's quick. So if I want to design something or divide something, I do it really quickly and send it back, and it's seconds of a job. So it's really cool to be able to do that. So let's undo that. Let's highlight that shape and let's go back into properties. You can colour fill on here, so you can see what a design would look like in colour, if that's what you want to do. Then you've got these, and these are really useful if you like if you want to do a cutting and a drawing design, but in one go. All right, so let's just come out of here. Let's highlight this and let's duplicate this design. So let's go to edit. Let's create an outward offset line, a 5mm outward offset line, for example, and just press OK. So I've now got 2 of those shapes. If I want to draw that scallop square, the original one, and then I want it to cut with a 5mm border around it, I can do that because I can set the lines to do specific tasks. So if I go on to the outside edge and I go into properties, right now it's set as a cutting or drawing line. So it would do either, depending on what function you press on your scan and cut. If I want to be specific, I can set that as a cutting line only. So if I sent that back to my machine now and asked it to cut, it would disappear off the screen. sorry, if I asked it to draw, it would disappear off the screen because it's not set as a drawing line, so it ignores it because there's nothing there for it to draw. If I then come out of here and I send that to go to edit and send that to the back, I can then access the smaller shape. If I then send that into properties and I set that as a drawing only line, it will then only ever draw that inside line. If I ask it to cut it, it won't do it because it's a drawing line. And that's really cool. And let me show you what I use that for a lot. So let's get rid of that. Let's bring on a circle. I'm going to just make that a bit bigger for you. And I'm going to create a 1mm outward offset line. So I'm going to go into my edit and go into edit on here and click on those two circles. I'm going to tap right at the bottom like that, and I'm going to create a 1mm outward offset line. So it's already set to outward. I don't need to change any more of this. I'm going to press OK, and I've now got my two circles. And remember, the original one remains highlighted. So I'm going to go into this original one right now, and I'm going to go back into my properties, and I'm going to set it as a drawing only line. Underneath here, I've got this dash pattern with a little arrow that means there's a drop down inside it. So I'm going to click on that, and I've got all these dash lines. So I can now do all my faux stitching. I can get the machine to do all my faux stitching for me. How amazing is that? So I'm going to set it to my favourite one, which is this one it's the 1, 2, 3, fourth one down, because I like the fact that it's a nice distance between itself and it's nice and neat and even. So I've now got my faux stitch line. The next thing that I'm going to do is send that, well, I'm going to access the outside shape now because I want to set the outside circle as a cutting only line. So it will, when I send this back to my machine, I'll put my universal pen holder in, I'll ask it to draw the dash line, even though both of lines are on the screen, I'll ask it to draw and it will only draw the dash line, because the outside edge is set as a cutting only line. Then I'll take my pen holder out, I'll put my blade in, and I ask it to cut. And it won't cut the dash line, it will just cut the outside edge. So you will then have a circle that your machine has faux stitched around the inside and cut it out. That's brilliant. That's going to save me months, if not years of my life, sitting there doing faux stitching. It's brilliant, and it's really even, and you can choose what pen you want, and you can pop it in your universal pen holder, and it just works. It's really cool. So the outside one now I'm going to set as a cutting only line, so I've done that bit, and now I'm going to send that backwards because I need it to go behind the dash line because I want to access the dash line again. So I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to send it to the back. And now when I click on that, it will take me to that dash line because the dash line is on top so it can access it. So if I go now into my properties, I've got my size and it's 157.3. If I make that slightly bigger, bearing in mind that the solid circle will be 158.3 because I added a 1mm border, 158.3, 159.3 because it needs a millimetre on either side, I can go up to that and it moves the dash line so it becomes closer to the outside edge, because I think faux stitching only works really well as a design element when you get it right to the edge. Now we have to leave a slight gap because the cut needs to happen and you don't want to cut over the edge of your dashed line. So you have to be realistic about that, but it gets it closer. Faux stitching for me doesn't work when you bring it in by about 3mm because it looks like you just couldn't be bothered to get it neat enough. And you might completely disagree with that, and that's fine. It's whatever you like. But for me personally, I like it to almost look like a faux matte layer. So I make sure that I work right to the edge, and that's what takes the time. So I can now just increase that. So if I just took that up to, click on there and took it up to 159.6, I've got my maintain aspect ratio there, and I can already see on the screen that that's too big. So I'm going to undo that and go back into my dash line again. So it's highlighted my top one because I've undone it. So I'm going to go back and send it to the back and highlight my dash line. Send that back to the back. Sometimes it doesn't do it immediately. Go back into my properties. And I'm going to just take that up slightly. So I'm going to take it up to 157.4. And then I can see now. So I'm going to try another one. I'm going to try 1.157. I'm getting my numbers mixed up now. 157.5. And then click on that. And that makes that move further out to the edge. It's brilliant. So now, in fact, I'm going to just download it to the machine so I can show you what happens on the screen. So I don't need to group it together. I'm just going to download it and it brings this screen up. So this gives us an opportunity to talk about this. If you haven't got a Wi-Fi enabled machine, work on your laptop and you download to PC. Depending on the operating system that you're using will depend on whether it gives you an option to save as or whether it automatically sends it to your downloads folder. So if you're working on Windows 10, it will send it automatically to your downloads, or as far as I remember, because I haven't done it that way for a long time. If you are working on Windows 7, it will give you an option to save as. So if you're working on Windows 10, when you go to your downloads then, you select the file, you right click it, and then it gives you an option to send to, and you will send it to your USB. And then you'll put your USB into your scan and cut, and you'll access the file in exactly the same way that you access the files from the USB now. If you've got a Wi-Fi enabled machine, all you do is press scan and cut transfer, and it's ready now. So I'm going to move on to my scan and cut screen now so that you can see how we access that. Okay, so I'm going to just switch my machine back on because it's gone to sleep. So it's gone into sleep mode. And I'm going to click on the cross and I'm going to come back to my home screen. So now when I go to retrieve data, I'm going to use this symbol here. So I'm going to click on the cloud and there is my faux stitch line. So I am going to group those two together so that I can make it really big so you can see it better. So I'm going to multiple select everything on the mat. I'm going to press OK and I'm going to go to Object Edit and group it together. Then I'm going to go to my resize box and I'm going to make it as big as I possibly can so you can see it. And the lines are very close together, so I am also going to zoom in for you as well. So now if I go to my Please Select, which is here, and I ask it to draw, it will only give me the dash line. And I'm going to zoom in. I don't know if I can zoom in this. Let me have a see if I can zoom in. It's not going to allow me to zoom in that function. So I'm going to zoom in Edit. All right, that's something I need to ask Brother to see if they can change. Can we zoom in when we get to the select screen? Because that would be really helpful. Mental note taken there. But you can see here, you've got the dash line in there and then you've got the solid line. It will always show you a drawing line as a blue line. So if I ask it to draw now, like we did before, so into Please Select and draw, you're going to have to trust me that that is just the dash line. So it takes away the cut line completely. So you haven't lost it, it's just ignoring it. So rather than leaving it on the screen, it's like, get rid of that because that's not what the person wants to do. If I go back and go into Please Select and cut, it will get rid of the drawing line. If I've got, let me just show you this. So if I go back and go back to Please Select and draw, but my blade is in the machine, it won't allow me to start it. Oh, no, hang on, that might not be true. Let me get my mat. It might not allow me to start it because my mat's not loaded. So let me load this in for you. Can you see? If I try and press start, it tells me to attach the appropriate holder. So it knows that that's not my universal pen holder or the brother pen holder. So it goes, can't do it. But it doesn't just not let you do it, it tells you why, which I think is brilliant. So let's make sure it does the same thing with the cut line. So if I go back and then I ask it to please select and I check cut and I take that out, and I don't know if I've got my universal pen holder with me, so you'll have to trust me that, see if I've got the brother pen holder in here. Yes, I have. Look at this. See, knew there was a reason I didn't unpack that. Because if I put this in now, which is the pen holder that comes with the SDX 1200, it doesn't come with the 900 in case you're wondering. So if you think you're missing something, you're not. If I put that in now and ask it to cut, and start, it will tell me to attach the appropriate holder. So it's really intuitive. It really is. You can't go wrong. It won't let you do it wrong. So just have a play around with that. And if you're somebody that likes faux stitching, you like the look of faux stitching, but you hate doing it, that's how you can do it in Canvas Workspace. And I love that. I love that you can, just when you think you found everything you can do with your scan and cut, then you go into Canvas and it all starts again. That journey all starts again. But you're familiar with all the icons by now, so this is even more fun because you're not trying to learn it at the same time. You know what these buttons look like and what they mean. It's brilliant. So that's why I get a little bit excited, and it is genuine excitement because I am a crafter just like you guys at home. I know I do it for my job and I am very blessed to do it for my job, but I'd still get a buzz from that. Just the simplest little thing that you find that's new. But the buzz for me comes when I'm driving up the road or down the road to Peterborough to the studios and going, oh, I've got something new to share. I love that. So let's go back to our stencil USB now. And let me show you some of the things that you can do with the patterns that are in here. So I'm going to just click off that and you can save this. Now, the other thing, just before we do that, in Canvas Workspace, you have the option to name it. So I can put faux stitched circle and then download, do that before it's downloaded. And then when you download it and you go to, if you're doing it on a USB particularly, or you're downloading it to your download files, the file that you're looking at will be faux stitch circle. If you don't name it, and this is just for those people that are with a non-Wi-Fi enabled machine, you will get it will just come up with a project code. So it will just be numbers from your download. So it's always worth, if you're doing it on a USB, titling it. Or if you're going to do it and save it and use it for later on a USB, then that would be my advice to do. Right, so let's get rid of that. And let's go back in here and go into my projects because I'm going to start a new project. So on here, I'm just going to press home because I'm going to get rid of that. So one of the really cool things that I want to show you is putting a stencil pattern inside a different shape. And we're going to focus on that bit today. Now, I know some of you have been in contact with the Innovation Hub and asked for me to do the demonstrations that I did with the tattered lace. I think it was called Traditionally Tattered Lace USB. These are the demonstrations, but I'm going to do it with the stencil USB just because I haven't got the other one with me and because it's the same thing. But you can do it with all the stencil ones. You can't do it with all the traditionally tattered lace ones because some of them might have a slightly open path. But going forward, you'll be able to do it with all of them. So I want to show you this with this now. So if I go into Retrieve Data and into my USB, and bear with my USB because it's a random one that I use. It's not the one that you'll get when you purchase it. So I have to just go in and find the pieces that I want in the places that are where they are. So I've got my animals USB on here as well, but the USB one here is the stencil one that you'll be getting. So you've got your papers on there and you've got your projects. So I want to do, let me think which one it was that I did. It was, oh, I know which one it was. I want to do this Art Deco one and I'm going to do Flower one. So this looks quite Rennie Mackintosh inspired, that real stained glass window kind of look. So I'm going to just send this into Canvas Workspace first. So to do that, you either put your USB in the side of your machine and you save it to your machine, to your USB rather, and then you plug your USB into your computer and you import the file that way. If you've got a Wi-Fi enabled machine, you click the cloud and it comes up and it says the save was successful. When you then go back into Canvas, so I'm going to go back to my tablet screen now, just going to get rid of that circle, and you look at your projects, it's not there until you refresh it. So when you click on there, that project now appears, okay? So you then click on that and it brings it onto the screen and both parts are highlighted. So we've got the inside detail and we've got the outside edge. So if I tap the screen, then it disconnects those two shapes. So it deselects them. So you can see I've got my rectangle there and then I've got this. Now, the first thing that you will notice about the new format is that this doesn't automatically ungroup. So before we made sure that the files were complete, it would have separated the pieces out. So if we go to edit, you can ungroup them manually, but it won't ungroup them automatically. So it means it's a quicker process. So I'm going to move that out of the way and I'm just going to drag a box over there and I'm going to group it again. And then I'm going to align those two to get back to where we were originally. And I could just do that again, but I want to show you. So I'm going to drag across the two, go to edit. This one is, they call it center and middle. I call it centrally vertically, centrally horizontally, because that works in my brain, whatever works for you. So centrally vertically, go back into edit and centrally horizontally. And now I know that they're directly inside each other. Now, if I divide this now, so I go to edit, I can't weld it because they're two separate pieces and they're not overlapping, so it won't allow me to weld it. If I divide it now, it should do that. So it's doing that and it's allowing this. So I've got the inside detail now and I've got the divided bit. So this is the punched or die cut waste that's left over. And then this is your divided piece. So now you can weld to that. This is going to cut into your cardstock. That's going to cut out of your cardstock. Okay. And you can save both of those. So you've then got that cuts in, that cuts out. All right. I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to show you this because this is super cool. So I bring back my divided shape. I go back and I go into my basic shapes and I'm going to bring on a heart. Doesn't matter what shape it is. I'm going to bring on a heart and let's just do a plain heart. And I'm going to click on that heart. I'm going to move that out of the way so I can actually see it. And I'm going to try and click on that little circle at the bottom. This bit drives me bonkers. Like that. And I'm going to make it more of a folk art heart. And I'm going to drag on that bit and I'm going to move that across like that. I could have done that in my properties. Unlock the aspect ratio and separated them if you want to be more specific. So now what I'm going to do is bring these two into here. So can you see every time I move a shape, if I move the heart, it puts the heart on the top. If I pick up that, it puts that on top. So just be aware that every time you move a shape, it will put it on top, okay? I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller. Like that, okay? And I'm going to put that over here. Now you can align it if you want to, but I'm just going to move the shapes. See, I go a bit too fast for it. I need to highlight it and then move it. I'm impatient when it comes to technology because I want to get on with the fun bit. Right, I'm going to show you two things. If I put the heart on top of it, oh, it does it again. Why does it keep doing that to me? It drives me bonkers. Let me see if I can get out of it, out of this. Keeps zooming in on me and I don't want it to. That's better. Now let's just increase that a bit now. Let's take that up to 35. Right, we're there again. Okay, so I have my heart is on the top and my stencil is on the bottom. So I'm going to group those two together. Well, I'm not going to group, I'm going to select both of them. And I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to try and weld it. So it welds it and it gives me a heart in the middle of that stencil. So now that is a completely new design. Clever that, isn't it? I love that. I love it. I think it's absolutely fabulous. So any shape you can now put in the middle of that and you can have the detail around it. Let me undo that. Let me take that heart away from there for a minute and let me go to edit and do an inward offset line. So let's do a 2mm inward offset line. It keeps the original highlighted, remember. So I'm going to move the one that I've just created and I'm going to move that one back to where I want it. And I'm going to do a drag arrow over those. I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to weld it. And now I'm going to bring this one into play and you've got your perfect matte layer to sit inside that heart. Make sure you do it before you weld it, otherwise you're going to have to undo it and do it again. But that now gives you that. What it also does, I think, and I'm going to try this now, is I'm going to align these two together first to make sure that they're aligned correctly. So edit and align it horizontal like that. Now that needs moving up a little bit more. So bear with me a minute while I send that to the back and I can grab the heart. Just nudge that up a little bit. And sometimes I find it easier to send things like that into my machine and nudge it up with the directional arrow buttons rather than doing it with my finger or doing it on my laptop, because I'm not very good with this thing. So what you could do now is group that, I think. So select both of those and divide that, and that will then hopefully, so now you've got a heart aperture in there because it's divided it and it's punched that heart through it. So take one design and see how many different things you can do with that design, and then your 100 stencils for, I'm not talking about, this isn't me selling it, this is me getting you to understand the value for money of this stencil USB. So £45 divided by 100 is 45 pence per stencil. You can resize them, you'll be able to weld them, you'll be able to divide them, you can create a completely different frame, you can put shapes within them, you can do all this different stuff by pressing a button called divide. It's really clever. Let's see if we can do this. So if I brought this over here now, and let's say I wanted this as my frame, I have to learn to pause before I try and move it. I am really rubbish with this. Right, it needs to catch up with me. So I'm going to let it catch up with me. This is when I keep, and Stephanie's even worse than me. Sometimes when we're sat at the house, she's like this. It's not doing anything. I'm like, yeah, I know. I thought I was impatient. You're even worse. Right, I've got it now. So let's go in and take, let's take this oval, for example. Let's say we want to use this as our sentiment plaque, but we want it to go inside the heart. So this isn't, let me move that out of the way because this is now a heart frame, so all this is open. So let me undo and go back to where I was before I divided the second heart. So let's go back, and you can just keep going back like this. Look, it just keeps going. So that's before I divided that heart. So if I remove that heart out of the way and I bring that oval back on again, I can then put this in here and I can resize it to fit the size that I want it to be, and I can cut an oval out of the middle of it. So it doesn't have to be the same shape. So if I do that, select both and then go to edit and then go to divide, and then I move this. Oh, now that's interesting that didn't work, and I know why it didn't work, because it's gone behind it. So I need to make sure that that shape is at the top. I think. I might be wrong, I might not have undone it far enough, but we'll try this. So let's try it and see. Oh, I'm welding. Oh, no, I'm dividing it, aren't I? I'm dividing it. Right, let's see. No, so it's not going to do that because I don't think I've gone back far enough. So I'm going to start that one again now and let's see if it works, because some things will work and some things won't, and we just have to get used to accepting that. But I like to go through all the different possibilities to see if it actually works. So let's try it again. Let's go back into our projects and let's bring that on. We're going to go to edit and divide it so that it punches it. So there, like that. And then like that and put that in the bin, because I've still got it saved, so I don't need to worry about that. Right, so what I'm going to do now is go back and go into basic shapes and go down and find the heart. I don't want the circle, I want the heart. So go down until you find the heart, and then I'm going to stretch that heart down, and I'm going to stretch it across. This is where I use my PC a lot. On that. Oh, do you know, it has a mind of its own, this thing, sometimes. It really does. It's quite funny. 35. Technology. You see, this is where when people say to me, oh, how can you say you don't do technology when you do all this stuff? Because it drives me bonkers. Let me tell you, it drives me bonkers. Right, so that's going to go in the middle there, and we're going to divide that. Now we're going to weld it. That's what we're doing. So we're going to edit and weld, and that gives me that now. So if I now bring on that oval, let's see if I can put that as an aperture in there. Let's see if that works. And I'm a real devil for not giving up. So I will spend hours trying to make things work, because then I know categorically that if I say something doesn't work, I know that I'm right in saying it doesn't. So if I go do that now, let's see if that will divide. So let's go to edit and divide, see if that will punch a shape in there for me. Because then that's another, yep, look at that. So you could have that. I love my job. I love my job. This is the best thing in the world. And this is really nice because it feels like you sat in my craft room with me and you're just watching me try new stuff. So now I've gone from it being a stencil to being a frame with a heart in it, with the detail in it, to being a frame with the heart and a sentiment plaque in it. How amazing is that? Just because you're pressing a button and having a play. Right, so that's that bit. Let's go back and let's see what happens if we try and weld it, because I'm interested to see what happens if I try and weld that oval, because it's not overlapped. So I want to make sure that I'm going through everything with you. Right, so let's do this now. Let's see if we go to edit and try and weld it. It just disappears. And it disappears because it's not overlapped. So that means it can't do it. So it just gets rid of it. Okay, so we know that that bit doesn't work. Let's now try, we've done divide, we know that works. So let's try doing remove overlapped, see what that does. That does exactly the same thing as divide did. Okay. So those are the two same things, but I'm going to show you something else in a bit that will change that again. And then let's do that one, and let's do subtract and see if that does anything different. That just keeps it there, so it doesn't create that punched bit, if you like. It just allows it to be joined together. Right, brilliant. So we know that that's where we're at with that. Right, I'm just going to show you the remove overlap function, and I switched to my laptop because touchscreen technology was driving me bonkers. And there's nothing worse when you're trying to follow a tutorial than the person who's doing the tutorial having to go, oh no, hang on a minute, come out of Zoom, refresh. So I switched to my laptop, so I hope that makes it a little bit better for you as well. So I'm going to show you, we've done the weld bit where you take the heart and you weld it on top of the stencil design. I'm going to now show you how you put the stencil design into a different shape. And this is fabulous because it takes those designs and changes them again. So it means that the 100 stencils then become so much more than that. In fact, potentially thousands and thousands of them, which is amazing. So I'm going to go into my projects, and the first thing we're going to do is access the stencil that we were using before. And when you bring something back on, so if you've either saved it or you recall it, you have to do that divide function again. It's just the way it is. So we have to do that. So we're going to go to edit and divide first of all. So we're used to doing that bit, and we now know that the stencils will divide because we've got the team to change the way that they're doing things. And then I'm going to just put a drag box. So all I do is left click and use my mouse or your touchpad to just drag around there, she says. Bear with, wasn't quick enough. There we go. So it's picking up those shapes, and then we can put those in the bin. And then I'm just going to drag this back into the screen. It's quite awkward because I can't see the screen as clearly as you can, but it'll be fine. So we've got this, and now I'm going to bring that heart back into play. So I'm going to go back and bring in my basic shapes, and then I'm just going to scroll down until I find that heart, which is there, and that puts that on the screen as well. So you can, instead of having the button on your scan and cut where you add and then you go back in, you can just add as many shapes on as you want. It will just put them on the same screen until you stop adding them. So I'm going to click Alt left click again and drag this down, so I've got that nice long slim heart, because it works well. And the reason that I'm changing the size of the heart is because I'm working with a rectangular stencil. So when you're working with rectangles, you work with ovals, and when you're working with squares, you work with circles, because an oval is taller than it is wider, as is a rectangle, and then a circle and a square are both the same ratios as well. So think about that, and think about the shapes that you add into a design, because I wouldn't put like a short, wider heart in there unless I wanted the design to kind of be shorter and wider. So you can do, but you just need to pick the area of the design that works with the shape that you're using. So before I do anything else, I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to show you this way first, where we just have it so that the design goes into the heart, and then the heart with the design, it will cut into your cardstock. And then I'm going to repeat it, and I'm going to do it so it will become a cutout. All right. So the most important thing, and it's crucial, and it doesn't work without it, which is why it took me ages to work it out, because I couldn't work out that this is what it needed, is you have to send the heart that you want to put the design into, or the shape that you want to put the design into, to the back. It doesn't work if you do it on the front. So I go to edit with the heart selected, and I go to process overlap, and you'll see now when I hover over, it tells me what that button does. So as a beginner, it's easier to do it on here, because you don't forget what these are, because it comes up remove overlapped, and it comes up with subtract. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to hover over that, it says centre back, and it also gives you a shortcut. So Control Shift D. I will never remember those, and I'm very aware that I'll never remember them. So I just send it to the back, because me and shortcuts. And I always, when I'm designing something, even if I'm designing a project, I always have to do it the long way around first, and then I start, and then I go back and I see if I can shorten it. It's just the way my brain works. If you can remember shortcuts, brilliant. No way I'm going to ever remember that. So I'm going to send that to the back, and now I'm going to select both. So I'm going to drag a box over the stencil design and the heart. I'm going to go back into edit, and I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to click on remove overlapped, and I'm going to let it do its thing. And when you'll be able to see it on that screen perfectly. You can see that the heart shape, with the pattern that's inside the heart shape, has gone darker. That's because there's a double layer now, and that will make sense when I do this. So I'm going to click and select that original stencil, and you can now see that that detail has gone into the heart, and that's why it looked darker, because it hasn't removed it from the stencil bit here. So it was that line on top of that line, which is why it looked darker. So you'll know when it's done something, because you'll be able to physically see it on the screen. So then you would download that, cut it into your cardstock, and you've got a cut in, like a die cut without the outside edge, without the foundation die. So that's one way of doing it. If you want to cut this out, you've got to add in another process. So let's get rid of all this, because we can. This automatically stays grouped together as well, because you've divided it, which is great. Let's just have a look, see if you can ungroup it. I can't see if that's available or if it's greyed out. It's greyed out, so it won't enable you to ungroup it. So let's save this, and then let's see if it allows you to ungroup it then. So go into project, click the plus sign. Saving this project is complete. So I'm going to press OK. I'm going to get rid of that one now. Put that in the bin. And just for the sake of it, let's just go in and see in my projects and see if it will allow it to ungroup once you've saved it. Remember, it's not going to be there automatically. You have to refresh. And there is that. There's that design. So let's now go into edit. Is that ungroup for... No, so it won't allow you to ungroup it because you've already divided it. All right, so we know that now, which is fun. Right, so let's put that in the bin. And let's go, you have to highlight it first, otherwise I'm trying to put something in the bin and I haven't told it what I wanted to put in the bin. Right, so let's go back to our original stencil design and let's go back to edit and divide it again. And then let's left click, and you want to get that outside part there. So left click and move that over. And then drag a box around all this lot. And put that in the bin. Okay, so now we've got our design. So let's go back and bring on our heart again. I'll just bring on the one that I've already saved because I might as well. And I'm going to duplicate this because I want to be able to create an outward offset line of the second heart to go around the detail, so that when I group it, it cuts it out as a new cutout piece. Okay, so we go to edit and we duplicate, and I'm going to grab one of those hearts now and move it out of the way, and then I'm going to position this one in the middle of here. So you can do it by eye. I mean, you could have this part of the design. If you wanted the flower over to the right or over to the left, it's up to you. So you can decide what part of this stencil you want. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to edit and send it to the back, because remember, we have to have that shape underneath the stencil design. And then I'm going to drag a box around those two shapes. And then I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to go to remove overlapped. I can see that that centre part's gone darker, so I know that it's done its thing. I can move that and I can put that bit in the bin now, and I'm left with this as one part. So now we're going to bring in this other heart into play, and we're going to do what we learned earlier, where we go to edit and create an offset line. Now, because my brain's the way it is, I would work out the line width of that stencil, and I would make my outside or my outward offset line the same width. So I'm going to work on 3mm, because I know when we were building the stencils, the minimum was 2.6mm. So I know that we're going to be all right with 3. So I'm going to create a 3mm outward offset line on that second heart. Remember that it will always leave the original highlighted, so we can put that straight in the bin. And then we're going to align these two. And I want to show you this because when you've got two shapes, they don't always align bang in the middle. It will depend how the design, the style of the design almost. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. I'm going to drag a box across both of those. I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to align them vertically. And then I'm going to go back to edit and align them horizontally. And I can see now that actually, when I've done it a second time, it's lined up perfectly. If it hasn't, you can highlight the piece inside it. So that's now behind it because it's seeing a pile again, remember. So I'm going to send the solid to the back so that I can access the detail. So I can now access that detail part, and you can nudge it up with your arrows on your keyboard. So it's actually, you can be more precise if you're using it on your laptop, but don't think that just because you're using it on a laptop, you have to use the PC version. You can use the web-based version on your laptop. So when you download it, it will give you an option if you want to go to the PC version. And if you want to, brilliant, you can learn that, but I like to use this version. So now we've got this. So what I want to do now is group this together so that when I download it, it will cut it out as one piece. So I go to group, and now that's one piece. So now you've got a new cutout. So all your shapes, etc., you can use with your stencil designs. There's something else I need to teach you, which is important. I'm just going to try dividing this again actually and see if this divides again, because that would mean then that I could weld that to a shape. It might not need dividing again, but I think it might. So we'll find that out. Right, so now previous to me dividing that again, if I'd have asked it to weld to a, let's say I wanted it to weld to a rectangle, so I wanted a rectangular back with the heart welded onto the front, it wouldn't have allowed me to do it. Once you've changed a shape, you need to divide it again. So I've divided it again now, so that one will now weld to another shape without getting rid of all the bits that are inside. So that's just something else for you to think about. The other thing that I want to teach you is letters, because funnily enough, last night, because this is the second day of filming, I was with Stephanie, and I got a social media message from people about letters and can you put patterns in letters and can you do it with the landlocked areas. So I'm going to show you with the letter M first of all, and then I'm going to show you with the letter A, because then you've got that little landlocked triangle, haven't you? So I'm going to bring on this design again, because it does work, but you have to think about it from a different perspective. So I've got that, so I'm going to go to edit and divide it, because we always do that at the beginning. Grab the shape, left click and move it, and then drag over that and get rid of that bit, because we don't need that bit for this bit. Right, so now I'm going to go in to my shape. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go into text, and I'm going to select a font that will be suitable. So something that's quite chunky, I think, because we've got quite a chunky design here. It's not really fine and filigree and detailed. It's pretty, but it is quite, some parts of it are quite chunky, which is fine because that's what we want when we're paper piecing, isn't it? So I'm going to just double click on the text box, and then it gives you an option to backspace. And then I'm going to just type in a capital M like that, and then tap off the screen. And then I can resize this letter like that. Now it comes up as a thick line, and what I've found is you have to go to edit and you have to go, I think it was divide, I'd forgotten about this bit, and then it takes it back to a single line. I've no idea why it does it, but I just know that it doesn't work if you've got the thick line. So just trust me and do it, okay? I know that sounds like a bit flippant, but having used it, I know what it's like. So I can then take this letter M and I can position it so that I've got part of the design in here. And it might not necessarily work really well with this particular design, but it's just to show you. So again, I'm going to duplicate that in case I want to show you the other bit afterwards. So I'm going to duplicate it so I've got two letter M's. And I'm going to move the second one out of the way. And then I'm going to take the first one. So I'm going to highlight the first one. I'm going to send it to the back. Like that. Then I'm going to put a select box around both of those pieces. I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to go to remove overlapped. And you'll see then that that letter M looks darker and the pattern inside it looks darker. So then I move this out of the way and you've then got that pattern inside that letter, which is fabulous. So monogram, personalised gifts now is a doddle because you do it like that. But you have to remember to send the letter to the back. Now I'm going to bring in this letter M and I can work with it here, doesn't matter. So I'm going to go to edit. It doesn't have to be on the mat for you to work on a shape, which I love because it gives you a bigger space. So I'm going to go in here and this time we're going to create a 3mm outward offset line, and I'm going to click on delete here so that it deletes off the original because I've never done that before. So let's see if how that works. So now I've got my offset line, I don't need to delete the other one. So that's cool too. Let's make sure that this is all one part, which it is. So then let's bring these two on here and let's drag a box. Let's go to edit and let's align it centrally vertically, back into edit and centrally horizontally. And then let's group that so that you can see what it looks like. And you've now got, this needs to catch up with itself a minute. So group it and then click off it. And you've got all that detail inside that letter M, so it will then cut out. It's cool, that, isn't it? I love that. Right, so you then save that. So you could do that with the whole alphabet if you wanted to. And then you could do, you get one of those long frames and put a family name or a personalised name or whatever it is. I just think that's a really, really cool idea. And I love the fact that we can put the stencils in there. So that's great. Now, it works slightly differently when you're using a letter A or a letter R or a letter that's got a almost like an aperture in it, if you like. So I need to show you that. So let's go back to my projects and let's start it as a complete fresh piece so it's not confusing for me as well as you. Can I just say that? So we're going to go into edit and we're going to divide it. And we're going to, oh, it doesn't matter if we move a single piece, we can just bin it because we're not going to use that anyway. But just grab the outside edge and move it out of the way like that. Then we're going to grab this and we're going to put that into the bin and bring this back in. So then, just to repeat what we've already done, we're going to go back, we're going to go into text. We're going to choose a font that will work really well with this. We're going to double click or double tap, backspace, and then I'm going to click Shift and A. Let's do a letter A. I'm going to tap off it. There we go. So it's now decided to highlight itself. I'm going to make this bigger by hovering over the corner, left clicking and dragging that letter. It will stay black. So go in to edit while it's selected and divide it, and you won't have to move it because there's nothing behind it, but it just takes it back to being a single line, which is what we want. So I'm going to do exactly what I've just done, the same process, and then you can see what happens. So, okay, I'm going to go to edit and send it to the back. And then I'm going to put a drag box around the stencil and the letter. I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to go to remove overlapped, which is this one at the bottom. You should see the letters go a little bit darker. And then I've got that. Okay, so that works and it takes the bits out of that centre part. Now what I'm going to show you is the problem when we duplicate that letter and we try to create an inward and an outward offset line. And it might just prove me completely wrong on work this time, but we'll see. So if I go put all this in the bin now, and we do the same thing again, and I'm not worried about repeating the whole thing because the more I do it and the more you watch it, the more it'll go in. And the more you do it, the more it'll go in. That's what I find. And the older I get, the more I have to do it before it goes in. But you know what? It's worth it. So divide it, move it, select the waste, and put that into the bin. Bring the shape onto your mat so that you can see what I'm doing. Go back. Go into text, select your font, double click or double tap, and then backspace it. We'll do the letter A again, so we'll do a capital A. Okay, I'm just waiting to see if it automatically puts the select box around it, but it doesn't until you tap the screen. So tap the screen. Click your mouse, whichever, and then go to edit while it's still selected and divide it again, and that gives you that single line back. There might be another way of doing it, but I haven't found it yet. So at this point, what I'm going to do is duplicate the letter A. So I need to select the letter A first, go into Edit and duplicate it, which is up here. So when I hover over this now, you can see, unlike on my tablet, it tells you what the word is, what the box means. So duplicate it. So I've got 2. And I'm going to move that over there. I'm going to then bring in this letter A, and I'm going to move it over the part of the pattern that I want. And I'm not being precise with this because I'm just doing it to show you what happens. So go to Edit and send it to the back, and then select that, go to Edit again and go back to Remove Overlapped, and then drag that, click on that, and I've got that detail in the letter A. Okay, so I can get rid of this now. Now the problem comes, and like I say, it might prove me completely wrong now, when I bring this letter into play, because when I go to Edit on a letter that I've brought on, it won't allow me to ungroup it. On your SDX machines, if I sent that letter A back to my machine now, I could create a 3mm outward offset line, and it would automatically create a 3mm inward offset line on the triangle that's in the middle of the A. But not everybody has that function. So if you've got a CM machine, you can't do that, and then that gets frustrating because you're like, well, I've still spent money on a scan and cut, I want to be able to do it. So the only thing that you need to do differently is send the letter A in from your machine. And when you import it in from your machine via USB, it allows you to ungroup it. So then you've got the triangle in the middle and you've got the outside of the A. And I'm going to download it now and see if when I send it back in, it does that, so that I can show you. It might not, because I'm sending it from Canvas back in. I might need to do it directly from the machine in the first place, but let's see if it actually works. So let's move this over here now, like that. And let's save that project, so in case it all goes wrong, we've got it saved. So I always tend to save a lot of stuff, just in case, because you never know. And then what I'm going to do is download this to my machine. Now you would do it onto your USB, as I spoke to you about before. Find it in your downloads or send it to your USB and then do it that way. Or if you've got your Wi-Fi enabled machine, you click that and now it's ready. So I'm now going to go back to my scan and cut screen, and I'm going to switch it back on because it switched itself off. If you find it's frustrating that your machine, it goes to sleep automatically because it goes into power saving mode. But if you find that, you know, you're working on something like you're working in Canvas and then suddenly you think, oh, I want to go back to my machine, it switched itself off. In the settings of the machine, you can set it to switch off 1, 2, 3 or 4 hours. So just put it on 4 hours and it will stay on. However, if you are working on a project and it switches itself off completely, you don't need to worry, because when you switch the machine back on, it will ask if you want to recall the file that was on the screen when it switched itself off. So you're not going to lose anything. Because the first time I thought that, I went, oh no, I've just done all that work, I'm going to lose it. But it doesn't. It's clever enough to ask you if you want to recall it. So I'm just going to press the home screen and OK, and get back onto here. So you can see there, OK to retrieve and resume previous memory. So you can say OK or cancel, because we don't need that. And now I'm going to go to retrieve data and into the cloud. And there is my shape. So if I now save that back again, well, first of all, let me show you what happens with for the SDX users. If I click on that and edit and object edit and go to my offset lines in here, just so that you know, if you're working in inches, 0.04 is 1 millimetre. So for 3 millimetres, you'd want 0.12. Or you can just work in millimetres and switch it and do 3 millimetres. But as we're on here now, I'm just going to put it to 0.12. I'm going to press OK, and you'll be able to see when I zoom in now that it has created an outward 3mm offset, and it's automatically done a 3mm inward one in there. Okay, so that's what you do if you've got an SDX machine. However, I want to be able to work on it for those of you that haven't got the SDX machine. So I'm going to get rid of the one, and can you see what it's done? It's made it look grey. That's because you need to move it on the screen and then it comes back to black again. It's because you've created it, you need to move the shape to make it. It's almost like it puts a box round, and when you've done an outward offset line, it goes outside the box so it can't see it. As soon as you move it, it brings it back, because I've had a few people contact me about that recently, and that's what it is. It also allows you to then, I think, bear with, I might be wrong, but I also think it allows you to be able to ungroup that, so you've then got a separate letter as well. So for the SDX users, you've got that variation in your machine when you do your offset lines on there. However, on your CM machines, you haven't. So I'm going to show you what you would do with that. I'm going to see if we can make this work. So you could send that into Canvas Workspace and work with that if you wanted to. So I'm going to put this in the bin because I want you to be able to see if, when I save this file now, if it allows me to ungroup that. All right, so it would just be a case of saving it onto your USB, saving it back into your machine. Let's see if it works. I genuinely don't know whether it will or not, but there's no harm in trying it. So I'm going to save it into the cloud. So my save was successful. There's too many S's in that for me. So I'm going to close that now, so I can get rid of this, because I'm going to recall the file anyway, aren't I? So I don't need that. I go back to my projects and refresh the screen so that it appears, and then I am going to, it's this one, so it's always the one on the left, I think, that works. So if I do click on this letter A now and go to edit, it now allows me to ungroup it, so it works, which is fabulous. So it means that everybody can do it now, which I love. So I'm going to move this one out of the way. I do that when I get excited, go, right, so, because I know that then I can carry on and do something else. So I want to show you this. So when I highlight this, now it again sees that letter A as a pile. So if you imagine that the palm of my hand is the bottom, it's got the triangle there, and then the letter A is on top of it, and that's how it sees it. So I'm going to work with the outside edge first. So we're going to go to edit, and we're going to go into our outward offset lines, and I'm going to create a 3mm outward offset line, but I'm going to ask it to leave the original as it was this time, so you can see the difference. I'm going to press OK. It still keeps the original highlighted, and I'm going to put it in the bin. Now, when I try and see if I get the triangle, can you see I can't access that triangle? It just keeps putting these control points on it. And no matter how many times I press it, because it's on top, until I send it to the back, I won't be able to access that triangle. So we go to edit, and we send the letter to the back. Now, when I go over the triangle and select it, it allows me to do it. So what I will need to do now is make that a 3mm inward offset line. So I go to edit again, into offset, and do a 3mm inward offset line, and then I press OK. Remember, it keeps the original selected, so I can put that in the bin, and then I can drag a box across both of those parts, and it will allow me to group that together. So hopefully, let me have a look now if I move that. Right, I haven't selected it enough, so I'm going to undo that and take that back. I need to drag a box over both those shapes, and now you can see they're both selected. Go to edit and go to group. And then I can put that in the middle of there, and it will cut the whole thing out. So I drag it roughly, and then go edit and align centrally vertically, edit and align centrally horizontally, and then group. And I now have designed from a stencil and a letter A with the stencil design inside it. So now you can cut that out and it will cut it out as another stencil, which is, well, as a physical piece. So it's like, imagine if you had that as a die and you had to buy all 26 letters in uppercase to get the design in that letter. That would cost you a fortune and you couldn't resize it. Now, just by using the fonts that are inside Canvas, and I haven't tried it with fonts from my computer, but I would have thought it would work exactly the same way, so try it. I've now got as many alphabets as I want with the designs in. So that the value of that USB has just increased hugely, hasn't it? Because you can do all these amazing things, and I love that. I am very aware that every time I go on air and do the Scan and Cut shows, I'm asking you to invest a lot of money on my word, and that means that I take that very, very seriously. And I also think that when you've invested a big amount of money in something, it's my responsibility to teach you as much about it as I can. And that's why I wanted to do these videos with the stencils, because I think it's a really good way of us being able to be together virtually and being able to show you in a less time constricted manner. Because when I'm on air, I can't show you all this kind of stuff. We've got 42 minutes and we are a shopping channel at the end of the day. So we need to do that sales bit as well. Whereas here, it's just amazing, isn't it? I love it. And we're going to do a lot more of this as well. So just be warned. Once you've done that, you save it, and then you could do the letter B, the letter C, the letter D, the letter E, and you can just keep going until you've got a full alphabet. So it's a little bit of work, but my word, is it worth it? It's fabulous, isn't it? Right, so that's that part that I wanted to show you. So I'm going to put that in the bin. I'm going to go back and I'm just going to try one last thing now with the subtract, because I want you to see what happens with that as well. So let's go back and find our stencil design. And while that's both selected, let's go to Edit and Divide. And let's click on the main image and drag that away. And then let's get rid of that bit. Like that. Put that in the bin. Because that's just the waste bit that's left behind, which is useful, but we don't need it for this. So let's bring on this heart again. And let's just position this here, and let's see what happens if we then select everything, go to Edit, and we subtract. Now, not every function will do something amazing, but it's worth clicking a mouse or pressing a screen to find out, isn't it? So let's subtract and see what happens. Okay, so that takes the heart shape out of that frame, and that's not really something that you're going to use, because you've got all these bits that are going to be wobbling around in midair, aren't they? So that's not necessarily something that you would do. So let's undo it, and let's try doing it so that we send the heart to the back, because we know that that makes a difference when we're removing overlap. So let's try that as well. So do all these different things and just try each process and see what happens. So now I'm going to select both of those, and I'm going to go to Edit, and we'll do Subtract again. And it might do exactly the same thing. No, it doesn't. Look, it does what the Remove Overlap does. So sending it to the back makes it work. And that's really, really great. So it's the same thing that we've just done, but both of the buttons, the Remove Overlap and the Subtract, make it do that. So it's just a case of bringing in a shape, bringing in a pattern, and seeing what you can come up with. So I'm going to do the process again. I'm going to go to my machine first this time. I'm going to select a stencil design. I'm going to send it into the cloud. I'm going to recall it from the cloud, and then we'll see what happens with a different design. Just to sign this bit off, because then I've shown you everything that you could possibly need to know about working with the stencils. So we're going to click on that. Oh, it's having a little moment where it's thinking about it. Right, let's try it this way then. No, it's having a minute. It needs to catch up with me because I'm impatient. So let's go to Edit, and select all. Sometimes it works quicker that way. Okay, it's not liking that either. So I'm going to give it a minute or two. So while it's doing that, let's go back to our machine and let's select a different pattern. Sometimes you just have to go, you know what, technology's a bit slow today. Let's do something else. So let's press OK on here and we can get rid of this. And let's go into retrieve data and into the USB. And I'm going to reiterate again, your USB won't have axolotl and badger and bear on. It's just that I've got a USB that I save loads of different stuff on. So I'm going to scroll down and go back up until I find my USB, because that's what I've saved this under, into there, and then go into projects. So that's what you'll see when you open yours up. So let's do one of the birds on a branch, because these are really rather lovely designs. So you've got 4 different ones in here. So you've got bird 1, which is nice. It has the 2 different birds on the branches. Then you've got bird 2, which has the bird cage. Then you've got birds 3. And remember, each one of these can be cut into your cardstock or out of your cardstock. And then you've got birds 4. So let's go back and use birds 3 because I really like that one. I like all of them, but I think I'm going to think about putting a scallop circle around it. So I think, or a skirt circle. So this will be nice. So I'm going to set it on my mat and I'm just going to save into the cloud, or if you're working on a CM machine that doesn't have Wi-Fi, you'll save it onto your USB. So into the cloud for now. I am going to now select the shape, hopefully with a bit of luck, if it's decided it's caught up. Okay, so if that happens, just go up here and go create new project and click on that. And it says leave site, changes that you made may not be saved. Well, I just want to get a new map, so I'm not bothered about that. But it does warn you every step of the way. So we've now got to wait for this new map to appear. Okay? So if you ever can't select something because it's having a bit of a dippy moment, just try a different way. And if not, just go make a cup of tea and come back when it's had a rest. Right, so we've now got a new project. So let's go into my project. So if you're importing it from a USB, you would go to SVG and click on that, and then it will ask you to choose the file. If you're working with a Wi-Fi machine, you go to My Projects, and there is the bird on the branch. So we've now got that, it's all selected. So while it's selected, let's go to Edit and Divide. And then we will grab the main shape and we'll move it, and that is now divided. So now you can weld that to another shape and we can start working with that in all the different ways that we've done before. So let's put that in the bin and let's move that over there like that. So let's go and take in a different shape this time. So let's go back and go into basic shapes again. And let's choose, I think that would make like a really nice kind of a plaque, like a circle plaque. So I'm going to use a circle for that. So let's see if that works. Let's do a scallop circle as well. Actually, let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to drag that scallop circle over here and I'm going to position it where I want it to be. So maybe about, let's try this one down here, maybe about there. So it looks like those little flowers at the top then become clouds. So I'm going to send this to the back. Remember, that's crucial. So send the shape to the back and then select the stencil and the scallop circle and then go to Edit and Remove Overlapped. And let's see what we've got. Okay, so what it's done there, can you see, is it's cut out the parts of the stencil but it hasn't kept that shape. So that's really interesting because it does different things with different shapes. And it's not the way the stencil's designed, it's obviously the way that the basic shapes have been designed. So that's interesting in itself. So let's see what happens if we undo that and we do it so that we have the circle back, but we'll leave the circle at the top on this occasion. So let's send the square to the back. So it's all a learning curve and it's all trying different things. So now let's do that and let's go to Edit and remove overlapped this time. Now it's taken the circle out, so that doesn't do the same thing either, but it's just a case of trial and error and see what happens. So let's try getting rid of all of it, and let's try and see what happens with subtract, because sometimes it will depend on where the lines are hitting the outside shape as well. So it's great fun just working through all these different things and trying all these different ideas. This is the best bit. So let's see what happens if we don't divide it first. So if we group it, let's see what happens now, because this is something that I haven't tried. So let's try this. So let's go back and find a basic shape. Let's do the same shape so I'm not confusing myself, because if it works with another shape, I'm going to be like, well, why did it work with that, not the other? Because then I'll want to investigate that. So now I know, but that by the time I finish doing this and I've driven back to Peterborough, tonight I'm going to be sitting there finding what shapes do what, because I won't be able to sleep unless I know. So let's now divide it with the scallop circle and see if that works. So edit and divide. So it's telling me it can't do it because there's overlaps, and that's because, not because there's an overlap in the original stencil file, but because I've overlapped a shape. So it won't allow me to do it until I divide it. So we know that now. So let's click off that, and let's move that, and let's divide this. So it's already grouped now, remember, so I can divide whilst it's grouped as well. So let's divide it, and then grab it and move it. And I'm actually going to group this and keep this on the screen as well, because I'm going to try it with that too. So let's go to edit and group. So we're building up lots of parts that we can try things with. And this is, if you were in my craft room with me or sat in my lounge with me and I was playing around, this is what I will be doing. So let's put this over here like that, and let's see if subtract works. And then I get lost and I'm like, right, what was I doing? I have to try and remember whilst talking to you and demonstrating. Right, let's try this. So let's now drag over the circle. Hang on, I need to send the circle to the back. It's no good. Oh, it's already at the back, so that's good. So let's now drag over there. Let's go to edit and let's subtract this time and see what happens there. It does exactly the same thing. So that's interesting. So what you would do then with that is, the way that I would do that then is I would, let me undo it. I would duplicate the circle now. So go to edit and duplicate the circle and move one of them away. Then I would take the circle and position it back where I wanted it. So make a decision as to where you want the circle to be. Go to edit and send it to the back. Then drag that, go to edit and either subtract or remove overlapped, doesn't matter which, because it both does the same thing, and move that. So now we can put that in the bin, and then make sure that this is grouped, which it is, it's all one part, and then bring back your duplicated scallop circle. So now I'm going to create a 3mm outward offset line for my circle and get rid of that original one. And then I'm going to drag a box around the scallop circle that I've just created and the stencil design, and I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to align it centrally vertically, edit again, centrally horizontally in the offset, and then when I group that together I've got what I wanted. So you can do it and it works, you just do it in a little bit of a different way. And that's me still discovering, 6.5 years on now, new things that you can do. So now you've got a completely different stencil than the one that you had originally, haven't you? That's amazing. And Canvas Workspace is free. I haven't even mentioned that. So you're getting all this for free. You imagine going out and buying an online design suite. It's not free, let me tell you that. So now you've got that. So that could be the gift tag that goes on the bag, that matches the card that you've stenciled, that matches the card that you've made, and everything works perfectly together. If you have a craft stall, when we can get back out there and start meeting people face to face again, you could have whole bags, wrapping paper, cards, tags, notelets, all sorts of things that all work together, and you can make it happen by using Canvas Workspace. So that's that bit. So let me put that in the bin, because I'm going to see what happens with this bit, which is the waste bit that's left behind. So let's see if it does something different with that. I don't know if it will, might not, might, no idea. Let's try it. So let's bring on the same scallop circle, because then I'm going to try a different stencil design with a different shape. So let's now see what happens when we do all of the functions. So let's go to Edit and Weld first of all. Right, so it now puts that. Now that's quite cool, because you could have the bird at the top of your card. Might not work with this particular design, or it could do. It looks okay. You've got this bit, and then you could have a sentiment plaque that goes in there. So now you can create, this is getting better and better, this, isn't it? Now you can put a shape into a stencil design by using the bits that's left behind after you've divided to create a sentiment plaque to put your sentiment on. So if you think, oh, I only want one bird, I can actually make a sentiment plaque from the basic shapes into that design. So you can change the whole design. Oh my word, I've got so much I need to teach you. That's fabulous. Right, so I'm going to undo that, and we're going to select it all again, see what happens when we weld it. No, we just welded it. See what happens when we divide it. So let's go to Edit and Divide and see what happens now. So let's see if, when I grab that, okay, so that moves that waste bit. So we're not going to gain much from that. However, looking at that now, that's the same shape that welded. Okay, I'm getting a bit excited now. So you could draw that and put it on top of where we created that sentiment plaque. I need to have a bit more of a play around with that and see how that works, because that's fabulous. So it's something else that it does, you know. So let's just, I'll work a bit more on that one, and then I'll come back to you on it, because I'm not sure that that's what I want it to be yet. So now let's do, I've undone it, so we're back to where we were. So let's drag that along there. And I think we're back now to our remove, overlapped and subtract. So we're back to where we were, and we know that those two things do this. Oh, subtract does something different again. It removes it all for some reason. So let's go back and see what happens if we send the shape to the back. So let's edit. And I know I'm going off on a tangent now, and I apologise if you're trying to follow this, but I will follow it up on air or do some other stuff with it, I promise. So now if I go to Edit and subtract it with the shape at the back, okay, so it leaves me with the shape inside that bit. So is it worth it? You might not use that, it looks a bit quirky, doesn't it? So, but we know that welding puts like a sentiment plaque in, or something that you want to, you know, you might want to do something different in that space. And then working from the waste, it doesn't give you the same variation. So just, it's all about having the confidence, and you know how to use Scan and Cut. Just send a shape into Canvas, take another shape, click it, see what happens. It's that simple. So I'm going to just put that in the bin, and I'm going to see if, when I bring on that same design, if I use a different shape, what happens? Because now I'm intrigued to see if it's the shape or if it's the design that works like that. And it doesn't matter which one it is, because it's still exciting, but I'm just intrigued to know. So let's edit and divide this. And I will spend hours and hours, if not days, just sitting there playing around with things like this, because I'm learning and I'm finding more versatility with the things that I'm spending my money on, which is brilliant because that's what I want. I want to get the best out of it. So let's go in and do let's see if it works with a letter. So let's use that same font because it's a nice bold one. So double tap, backspace. Let's do a letter. Need quite a, let's try a letter O, capital O. Actually, no, let's try one without a landlocked area first. So let's do let's just do an M again, capital M, Melanie. Right, and then tap off it. That will give it a select box. Left click and drag it to resize it. And remember, go to edit and divide. And that gives you the single line again, because if you don't do that, it doesn't work the same. I've just zoomed in on here as well, haven't I? Oh, Melanie. Reset. See, it's got a reset button on here, on your piece, on your laptop. That's even better again. Right. So click on that M, move that over, and I'm not going to worry about what pattern I've got where. I'm just going to see what it does. Send it to the back. Have I divided it? I don't know, but I'll soon find out. Did I divide it? I don't know. I'm going to start again because I'm not sure if no, I must have divided it before I put my letter on. So letter M, send it to the back. I'm going to stop after this because I'm going to drive me bonkers as well as you. Send it to the back. Yep. And then let's go to edit and remove overlapped and see if that works. No, so it does the same thing. So it's the pattern. So it's this pattern. You can still do it. Can you see? You can see the bits that it saved within that letter M. So you would do that the same way you did the scallop circle. So you would duplicate your circle, duplicate your letter, and then put the letter over the top of it. But that's really cool. So all those stencil bits now can go in your letters. You just work around it a little bit differently. And I find that fascinating. This is the bit that I love. I remember when I used to bring punches from EK Success, and it would be a straight border punch without a corner. And I was adamant I was going to make it go around circles. And I made it work. And there were hundreds of different combinations that you could do. And I love that bit. But what's the point of me spending my days doing that if I can't share it with anybody? But I get to because of the job that I do. Right, I'm going to leave that there, because otherwise I'm going to go off and I'll spend hours and you'll be sitting there going, what is she talking about? But I'm going to do more work on it when I get back home tonight, back down to Peterborough home tonight, and then I can start to show you different things. So I'll work out which pattern works with which and what you need to do. So that's really great, because there might be other combinations yet. And then hopefully, with lockdown easing a little bit, I'll be able to come and do some more videos. Or our lovely Nikki, who's filming all this right now, is going to put me some software on my laptop. That means that I can do it and not have to drive up to iHub. So that gives me even more to do. But I like it, so it's fine. Right, so that kind of covers Canvas Workspace. It covers the stencil USB, sending it in and playing around with all this lot. I am going to try my best and my hardest to try and do different demos on air than I've done in these tutorials. Some I might do, some I might not get to do. It depends on my time restraints next week. But I think you've got a really good starting point. I really wanted to make sure that if you're somebody that, like I was 2 years ago, who didn't even consider really using stencils, had done it in the 1990s or the 80s where you stenciled everything in your house, but had never done anything since. I just wanted to give you the confidence and some inspiration as to how you can get the best out of this new USB. And I will get Sarah Bryan, our lovely lady who does all our social media, to tell me before we go to air where these videos are going to be, so it's easy for you to access them, so you can even be able to watch them before you buy the USB. You know, it might be something that you think, am I going to use it? I want to see what the tutorials are like first. Fine, absolutely. Let's do that for you, and then you can make a considered choice. If you're somebody that's just going to go, no, I love it, I'm going to have it, brilliant. But it's nice to be able to give you that versatility. I can't promise by any stretch of my imagination that I'm going to be able to come up and do this with every single USB that we bring you. But if I think it's crucial, we'll do it. If it's a 3-dimensional project or a moving card that we can describe in words, we might describe it in words. If it's something that as I'm designing it, I think actually our viewers need to see that, then we'll make that happen for you wherever we can. So yeah. So I'm going to sign off now. I'm going to drive back down to Peterborough, play around with this more, get all my demos and tutorials ready for on air, and I will see you when we launch this product. And if I don't see you when we do that, I'll see you when I'm back on air. So please, everybody, stay safe, take care, look after each other, and just be nice and be kind to each other. And I'll see you very soon.